Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Adaptable Octopus. A lot of things have been on my mind lately, so I invited Dr. Clarence McCray to come on and just have an open discussion.
Good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon, Blair. I hope we can get some of your questions answered today.
Um, Thank you for always being available to have these type of conversation. I have a mom that is in distress because her child had a mental breakdown in the court and nothing was done about it. And in my experience with a physical disability, had I had a seizure in the same courtroom with everything being the same, they would immediately stop the court proceeding. I just don't understand how mental health is looked at so differently than physical health.
Well, I think one of the biggest issues that surround mental health is the misunderstanding or the stigma that is surrounded by saying that I'm not well, and people understand what you mean. So, with a physical disability, you can say, "Well, I have CP and or cerebral palsy," and people kind of understand what that is. But when you have uh, a mental disorder, many people don't understand that, and then there are some people who don't even acknowledge that because they don't believe that mental disorders actually exist.
Is there any advice you can give with parents who are struggling to get their mentally distressed child the care they need?
Yes, and it's a full thronged approach where you have to look at uh, one, the root cause of the situation, and then understand whether it's a medical issue or truly a mental health issue. Um, and then you have to find a provider who will work with both the mom and the child to rectify whatever situation may be going on. There's sometimes, and this is not in every case, there are times when the child does have a situation going on. However, the parents are ill equipped to understand how to handle or how to deal with that problem. And that will take us down a totally different road, but it's a good road to go down at some point.
Yes, I know a lot of mental health providers that are just have their hands tied because there's so much red tape. I think there's something that needs to be done about that, and I'm not sure what.
I think you're right. I mean, there is something that needs to be done with that. I think at times a parent should be able to partner with the person that they feel most comfortable with. When I talk to people about mental health and even seeing me as a therapist, I tell them that if this relationship doesn't work, and sometimes it may not be a match, and it takes us a few times to meet in order to understand that. I don't take offense to them saying, "Hey, I would like to try someone different," because I may not be able to speak to their need, and that's okay. And so, what I try to do as a therapist is to make sure that they find the right person that can help them. And that's where you provide resources, you navigate, and you collaborate with other agencies to meet the need of the parent and, once again, the child.
I'm a big advocate on support groups, online, in person, whatever it takes. And I know for a fact there are several support groups out there. What I found is colleges have great family centers. There's different programs that universities around here run. Now, I did not know that until I started Googling it, but how do we get that information?
The best thing you can do is contact your local university, find out if they do have the availability for um, the support groups, and just attend. Sometimes it's word of mouth too. You know, you find a lot of great information through just connecting with people. Another valuable resource is Facebook. Believe it or not, Facebook has a ton of support groups that you can go to, and if there are people in your area, or they may have a list of national groups that you can find in those rooms. And it's difficult to really find mental health support groups because of the stigma surrounding mental health.
Yes. And I found, like I said, I never really accept the fact that I had cerebral palsy until I was in my 40s. And when I got into a group with other people dealing with the same things I was dealing with, it is a wonderful feeling to know that you are not alone, that there's other people out there just going through the same thing. Ask for what you need until you get what you need.
And you're right, there are a lot of people out there that will help and that are going through similar situations or have gone through that situation. When I first started into even knowing what mental health was, I was told, "Oh, you're depressed," and they threw pills at me, and I was like, "I don't like the way these make me feel." And they were like, "Well, whatever, you need that medication." And I'm like, "Is there a different way?" And they said, "No." But I found that there is a different way. Um, but mental health is a situation that we have to look at from several different angles. And the one that I think that stands out the most to me right now is cultural. There are cultural um, factors that prevent many people from seeking help, even though they know they need help. In some communities, having a mental illness is frowned upon. I've often heard people say, "Well, we don't have that in our family," and that's not true because I just did a genogram of their family, and I'm telling you, they have it, but they refuse to acknowledge it. And so, if we can break the stigma of what mental illness both looks like and how it's treated, I think that people will change. And I also think that if we find clinicians who are truly in it for helping people and not just in it for money, I think the stigma of mental health would also change.
Difference. There's a difference in the ones who are doing it because that's their heart. They desire to help people. They desire, and there's the ones that just thought about the money. In my opinion, those are the ones that get so wrapped up in paperwork that they forget to be a caregiver. They're more focused on paperwork than they are giving care.
Unfortunately, one of the biggest issues surrounding mental health, and one of the things that we have to work with as clinicians, is the paperwork, and sometimes it can be rather cumbersome. Keeping up with clinical notes, making sure that letters go out, appearing in court, speaking with the judges, and guardian items. It's a lot of work that most people think, well, you just go and sit down for an hour and talk to someone. No, it's a little bit more involved than that. And should we get paid what we do? I think so, yeah. Um, but should you allow that to be the driving force for you to be in this industry? And I still say no. If you're in a helping profession, you're in it to really see people change, to watch people grow, to be able to share in the experience and see them um, become butterflies out of caterpillars. And it's that that really creates the satisfaction for me as a clinician. Um, I've watched people that and I've said it, and I'm not ashamed to say that I have said, I don't ever see this person changing. And within a short period of time, they've changed. And I'm like, wow, what was it that caused the change? And so, we get into this ideology, whether it's CBT or DBT or what modality is the clinician using. And research shows that it's about the relationship. It's not about your modality. It's not about what you do as a clinician. I mean, we can pull rabbits out of our hats and do Jedi mind tricks and stuff, but it's about the relationship at the end of the day.
I know a lot of times in juvenile cases, for different reasons, they recommend parenting class. And from my knowledge, when you're court ordered for a to take a parenting class, you just go to one specific class. Is there other options like parenting class for people with disabilities and pairing classes for other things?
That's an area that I'm not as versed in, but from experience and working with some people, there's one class that's provided by the court system, and it's called Children in the Middle, and it teaches parents how to keep their children out of the middle. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't teach the parent how to address situations when it comes to the child. And it also doesn't teach the parent how to address situations when it comes to them. Because if they're in that class, they could be going through divorce, separation. It could be a myriad of things. And sometimes having a clinician or a therapist work with you wouldn't be a bad thing. It could actually strengthen your case because now you have someone who can speak to your character, who's worked with you for a little while, and can write the letter, or even I have even appeared in court to speak to the Commonwealth's attorneys and other people on behalf of my client because I feel that strongly about being there in those times when I can be.
My heart is with you, parents, and I know it's hard, but just don't be ashamed. There's beauty in ashes. The knowledge wasn't there in 82 as it is today. And I just think about what would it been like if my mom had somebody supporting her? Um, would my life be different?
But that's a deep thought, and but I like how you said that, and it's interesting because when I was diagnosed with my vision impairment in 1990, the doctor said, "Hey, this is what you can't do. You can't do this. You can't do that. You won't do this, and you'll never be that." And nobody ever took the time to tell me what I could be. Um, and so I fell into a depressed state at that point. And all he did was say, "Hey, take these pills and everything will be okay." Well, that did never solve the problem. And I wonder what would have happened, like you, had my parents known a little bit more about what was going on with me than to hear, well, there's nothing we can do. And although still, what in 1990, 20, 35 years later, there's nothing that they can do. I do know that I'm not alone in this thing because of the Facebook groups that I belong to, and because of the doctors that I've seen around the country who have told me that despite there's nothing that we can do, there is research happening that will work to address this situation. And I'm comfortable knowing that it may not be for me that there's a cure, but there's for someone else. And they're even working with the Human Genome Project to understand how the brain works when it's depressed, and how they can tailor make medications that will speak to your body and not just give you a pill that is for everybody. They can custom make something for you, and that's actually in the works. Um, and so I'm excited to see the future of mental health, but I think that we need to start talking more about stigma and how to eliminate that in order to get the help into the people that we.
Yes. Um, you never know who's struggling. So, have you ever heard the saying, be kind because you don't know what other people are dealing with? But what would happen if you spoke up and said, "Me, I deal with this," and then there could be like a different conversation and a different way of healing?
I do that often because I tell, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I am a person who struggles with depression from time to time. Um, and it's nothing that I can control. There's nothing that I can do about it. It's just the way my life works. And in those times, I have a network of people that, if I am really struggling, I can call and say, "Hey, this is what's going on with me today. Can we talk?" I don't always have the ability to get to my therapist today, but when I can, I go. That's the other important thing about being a clinician myself, is I not only understand the importance of mental health from my client's standpoint, I have to understand it from my standpoint too. And so I have a therapist as well. I think all therapists should have a therapist, because we carry a lot. We are the secret keeper of a lot of things. And we need to have a place to feel safe and be able to get these things off of our chest and talk about our situations and problems.
Recently, I had the opportunity to share something that I it was something like I had buried down deep and I was ashamed of it. But when I shared my story to help somebody else, it took on another form. It was a sense of not empowerment, but of letting go and using the pain for a purpose. So I think it helped me more than it helped the other person. But let it go.
Sometimes, and that's great advice. And I often use if anybody remembers the Jetsons, and I know I'm dating myself, which is fine, but in the beginning of the TV show, Jane Jackson would put on these different masks with different makeup on, and we do that as people. Sometimes, we have to wear the mask of happiness or joy to not infringe upon someone else's feelings. It is a beautiful thing to be in a space where you don't have to wear the mask of anything. That is freedom. Having to wear the mask is not freedom. And so going into those rooms or into the support groups and being able to share what you're going through helps dispel the stigma, because you don't know how somebody's feeling unless they tell you. But then, too, we've got to a place in this culture where we don't care about what people are feeling. It's about us. Well, no, it's not about us. It's about us collectively, because if we're not good collectively, then how we ever expect it to be a better a better nation, a better group of friends, or a better family if we don't rely on each other. And so I think you're right. Sharing your burdens with your friends, or sharing your burden with someone you can trust, is important.
There's so many people and so many stories that could help a lot of people. And if you have a heart to go into the mental health profession, do it. It's not about the money, it's all about the heart. And for me, the saying, everything you do, everything you are comes from your heart. So always keep that clean.
I would also, recommend that, some people don't have the wherewithal to endure the process of going all the way through. You get your bachelor's degree in psychology or a related profession. You get a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, um, and that's 3 years. Then you have to do a certain number of hours, depending upon your state. In Virginia, it's 3,600 hours of supervised work before you can become licensed to be a therapist. But I encourage people who don't have that kind of time and who want to help. There is a program in Virginia called Peer Recovery Specialist, and you can become certified and registered through the state to provide these services for people without having to go through the extensive process of a master's degree. This program consists of a 72-hour class, 60 in class hours, 12 outside of class hours. Then you have 500 hours of volunteer work, and that can be either paid and or volunteer. And after that, you can sit for the state board for this certification. This certification is becoming more and more prevalent in the mental health field and in other areas because the peer bridges the gap between the therapist and the client. There are things that the peer can do with the client, such as go out to lunch or go to the movie or go sit in the park or whatever, that I can never do as a clinician because of the code of ethics. And so if I have a peer working with a client, we can better address the client's full needs if there's that peer there to say, okay, uh, Blair needs some extra support this week. Can you provide it to her? And the peer can say, yeah, what does she need? And I can describe what she needs, and the peer can meet those needs. Like, hey, she might need to go out to lunch and just sit down and talk about things without having to sit here in this room and it feels so sterile. Take her out to lunch or uh, take her for a walk in the park or what have you. And that has been a tremendous success in Virginia. And so those classes are around. Um, what I can do with you, Blair, is share an email address where you can actively get news flashes, training times and places, and other things where peers support peers. And I think it's a beautiful. I think it's a beautiful thing.
I definitely will share it in the bio. And I am excited to tell everyone I am currently going through the process of becoming a peer recovery specialist. And I just started, and it's truly life changing. So even if you think or thought about it or thinking about it, look into it. We need good we need good people out there. So thank you, Clarence, for having a discussion with me. And like I said, I will link the email address in the bio of this video. Remember always to stay adaptable and never forget you have a purpose. Bye.